Hey guys, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. A few things to get out of the way. First, it is cold. I am cold, so I'm not happy. It's raining, so the dogs are mostly in. So you might hear the dogs, you might hear Steve, you might hear my daughter Colleen, but it is what it is on this channel. We are still doing the dog's Christmas party, and we are making things for the chickens as well, so they may be included in the video. And I put in my community post, but in case you didn't see it, I'm asking for you guys to send me pictures of yourselves in your Christmas sweaters or your Christmas gear, or your pets if they have Christmas outfits or headbands or whatever, and we're going to add that to our video. And you can email it to me at the address in the description box for this video, and let me know if you want your name included or not. And if you send me a picture of your pet, let me know what your pet's name is so I can include that. What else? Oh, people have been asking about my necklaces. This necklace is actually a fingerprint of my mom, who has passed away, and then it has some writing on the back, and then my cross, and then I always wear, I have my dad's, who has also passed away, his original dog tags, and an old set of my husband's dog tags, so everybody is always with me all the time. So hopefully that cleared that up. Yes, I know I look bad. I haven't been sleeping well, and I am really crabby today. I don't know why, but I'll tell you what I blamed it on last night. We were watching this show. It was like the Great Christmas Light Fight or something, and there were like 4 houses competing, and 2 of them I really liked. One I was kind of like, it's not bad. And then this other one, I was like, no, absolutely no. And then, of course, when they picked the winner, they picked the one that I was like, no, absolutely no. And I've been crabby ever since. So I told my husband it was because of the judge on the Christmas Light Fight. So we're going to go with that. Yeah, I guess that's about it. So there's been a lot going on in the Idaho murders. We had the amazing Brian Enton special, which a lot of you have asked me if I have it. I do have it, but if you go to News Nation on YouTube, you can find it there. It is 42 minutes long, I believe, and you can watch it there now for yourselves. The Moscow police came out with an update yesterday, and I think a lot of their updates were sort of in response to the information that's been coming out, specifically from Kaylee's family, her dad. So I'm going to read you yesterday's update, talk about a few things, and then I have made a list of kind of the major talking points that I've seen people talking about on Reddit, on Facebook, you know, all the different social medias, Twitter, everything that's out there. And I want to kind of address them and let you know what I think, and let you kind of make up your own minds about where you stand, where you're at. I also want to say, and this was so big for me, I don't know if you guys watch Ken Main's, his channel here on YouTube is called Unsolved No More, and he is awesome. He's former law enforcement, and he's been talking, he usually does cold cases, but he's been talking now, he's doing a true detective type show series, and he's been discussing this case. And he was on News Nation one night, and they just like abruptly cut him off. And I was so excited that he was on there. And then they cut him off, and I was like, whoa, what? And he did a video addressing it, and he is going through and he's reading. They had sent him a list of questions. I want to say it was like 5 questions that they wanted to address while he was on there. And I think they only asked him like 2. And he thinks that he was cut off because he wasn't going along with the same narrative that the host of the show was pushing. And that could or could not be true. But when he was going through the questions, some of the answers that he was giving, and this happens so often, if I see like, and I have been seeing it, but when somebody agrees with what I've said, and I feel like, hey, these people, like, I respect them, and I think, hey, they know what they're talking about, kind of thing, it makes me feel so justified in my thinking that maybe what I'm saying isn't so far out there. And it's been funny in recent days. So much has been coming out in the mainstream media, people saying things that, if you follow my channel and you've been following my videos on this case, if not, you can go back and watch. They're all in a playlist. They're saying things now that I've been talking about, and we as a community have been discussing since damn near the beginning. And now they're just finally coming around to these realizations or these ideas, these theories that they have. And I find it so funny that we've been talking about it all along. And I know I'm too small for anybody probably to have seen it and been like, hey, maybe that girl knows what she's talking about. So they're coming up with these, somebody is coming up with these ideas of what could have happened. And whoever that person is thinking the same thing I was thinking. And I feel so justified. But when Ken Maines agreed with me on certain points, I was over the moon. Because I really respect him and his opinions and ideas. So I just thought I would share that with you, that maybe here on my channel we're not so far off of what everybody else is thinking. So good job on you guys and on me, because we all think pretty similarly. But if you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine too. If you're new here, you should know that I don't expect you to believe everything I believe. I like you to have your own ideas and opinions. That's why I bring you the information in the manner that I do. And if you have a different viewpoint or whatever, and you can respectfully comment that to me, I'm absolutely thrilled to have a discussion with you, and maybe you can make me look at things differently. That's kind of how we do it here on my channel. Like I said, as long as you're respectful in the comments, I don't have a problem with disagreement at all. I mean, it's healthy, and like I said, it gives me a different perspective, and it may turn my thinking around. So I appreciate everybody's independent ideas and thinking and theories and speculations. It's healthy, it's normal, it's what makes the world go around. So after all of that rambling, let's dive in. I know I've had people say, can you just get to it? Well, we're going to get to it now. All right, so before I came up with today's video, I was going to do a different one. And basically, the highlights were, police revealed there was the sixth person on the lease at the house, and somehow this was like breaking news, and it didn't amount to anything. They didn't believe the person was there, didn't have anything to do with crime. The person confirmed that they had moved out prior to the beginning of the school year. So I'm not quite sure why that was breaking news, but that's one of the things that has been frustrating for the parents, because, a lot of them are not happy with the amount of updates and information that they've been getting from law enforcement, and saying that they learn a lot through the news coverage. Well, you hear like breaking news, police discover, and then it's something like that. So I get why that's frustrating. The incident at the Sigma Chi house at 3:01 a.m. on the day of the murders was an alcohol offense, which was addressed on the scene by an officer. Law enforcement says this call is not related to the murder investigation. And we had been talking about that. What was that incident? It is sad to think if these murders did occur between 3 and 4 a.m., we know from past videos I've shown you, you can see the Sig Chi house from the house where the murders happened. It's a short walk. And to know police were that close and there could have been a killer in the house at that time it's kind of sad. Moscow Police Chief James Fry is confident the team of investigators will solve the case, even though no suspect has been identified yet. As far as releasing information to the public, Chief Fry pretty much said what I've been saying. The suspect may learn that information too, which may jeopardize the case, which is the guilt knowledge that we've been talking about, that you need to keep some things close, that when somebody comes in and they've been arrested, or say somebody confesses, you'll be able to vet them out by information that only the killer would know and the police know. So you don't want to give away too much very specific information that only the killer would know. He said it also might jeopardize the integrity of a trial if an arrest is made. He says there's a way bigger picture here than just people knowing. For it to be a fair trial, you have to have people that don't know facts and have already made up their own opinions about them. So he's talking about, he doesn't want to taint any potential jury pool down the line. Moscow PD are getting a flood of calls every few hours daily, and I got some examples written down. I've showed you their call blotter in past videos, but there was one, a food delivery driver heard a woman screaming, a mom asking police to walk her daughter to her car after work, a woman who woke up at 3 a.m. to find her front door wide open. And I think this is to be expected, right? You have a killer out there on the loose, so you're going to be hyper vigilant, hyper aware, and all of these things are going to be what may have just been odd before is going to be more scary now. And I'm not surprised that they're being flooded with calls. So it just shows you, how afraid the people in this town have become with, I don't want to say lack of progress, but, they constantly tell us no suspect has been identified, they haven't found the weapon, and that's going to add to the fear. Many students refuse to come back to campus after Thanksgiving break, and some classrooms at the university are half empty. There was a celebration of life at Real Life Ministries in Post Falls, Idaho on Friday for all of the families. It was really nice. It's also available online if you want to watch. So now let's get into the talking points. The whole targeted, not targeted mess. We've kind of gone, there was a 24, 48 hour period that I'm pretty sure it was my last live where we talked about the back and forth of, yeah, it was targeted. No, it wasn't targeted. It was targeted. The kids weren't targeted. It was the house. No, it wasn't the house. It was the kids. And then they've kind of just come down with, it seems that it was targeted kind of thing. So is this to make the community feel safer? Because there have been students interviewed who say that they would feel safer knowing it was targeted. And that's kind of what I'm wondering. I mean, I feel like targeted is kind of a loaded word. Like, I don't think any of these four did anything, like had any specific, like, high-risk lifestyle or something like that would make them a target to be murdered. Not at all. I do think the killer was locked in on one or more of the victims for some reason. We talked about this in previous videos, 2 different possible motives like jealousy and things like envy, things like that. Maybe they were obsessed with one of them, had some sort of like fantasy built up in their head. They were trying to impress one of the girls to get them to go out with them. They were jealous that the girls were dating someone else. Maybe one of the 4 did something unintentional that the killer took as a slight or a snub, or was hurt by something they said or did or whatever. So in that fashion, I feel like it was targeted to them, but not because of any like lifestyle decisions or anything like that. But I do feel like these specific victims, or one of the victims, was chosen by the killer for whatever reason he may have had. Now, I understand, like, living in the community or being a student, that would give you a little more comfort thinking that it's not random, right? That you aren't going to be the next one because you feel like it was aimed at one or all of these victims. So I see where that would give them a sense of safety, but I don't want the community or the school to develop like a false sense of security, I guess would be a good way to put it, because they think it was aimed at them, so they don't have anything to worry about, because it's just not so. And why I say that is we've talked in previous videos about if this killer had an idea in his head of how this whole thing was going to go down, sort of like a fantasy, like he had a plan, like I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do this, this, and this, and that's how it's going to be. And then he went in there and it didn't go according to plan. Like, for instance, Kaylee wasn't supposed to be there that weekend, and she was in Maddie's room. Maybe that somehow messed things up for the killer. Ethan didn't live there. He was staying with Xana. Maybe Ethan being there threw off the plan. If he went upstairs and his targets were the girls upstairs, and then Xana and Ethan heard it and interrupted him on his way out of the house any number of things could have not gone according to this guy's plan, and so the fantasy is ruined. Now, could he maybe try to do this again, get focused in on someone? I've talked about it before. They're called proxy victims, somebody that kind of stands in place of someone else. Like, a lot of times serial killers are killing their mothers over and over again, or things like that. You know, he could pick somebody to be whichever was his target as a stand-in and try to do it again, but this time have it go according to his plan, according to his fantasy. So I don't... We talked in the previous video about the other murders and how I could see it fitting a serial situation because of those other murders. And that's not completely ruled out of my mind, even though police have ruled it out as far as they're concerned. But it doesn't necessarily feel like a serial killer, but that doesn't mean that this killer won't turn into a serial killer, that he won't strike again. So even if this is targeted, I hope the community and the students will still stay vigilant, stay aware, and do everything they can to protect themselves. The ways that you don't make yourself a target, it almost feels like it doesn't apply here, right? Because everybody was doing everything that we're always told. They were in pairs. Maddie and Kaylee were together. Xana and Ethan were together. The girls had been out drinking, but they arranged for a safe ride home. You know, I don't know. I wish I knew how to tell you not to make yourself a target, but sometimes no matter what you do, bad shit happens, and it's sad, but it's the truth. But you still need to take every possible precaution to keep yourself safe. I mean, if that means carrying pepper spray, or like me and my daughter, we don't go anywhere without like our pocket knives. I mean, I have a gun there, you know, anything. We have security cameras all over the property and on the house. I mean, anything you can do to keep yourself safe is never a bad idea. So keep doing it. Keep your eyes open. Always situational awareness. You know, we're all in this age of our phones, right? We're so focused on our phones all the time. If you're out walking, especially at night, get your head out of your phone. Look up, make sure you know who's around, what's going on. If you're sitting in your car, first off, have your doors locked. And secondly, if you remember the Naomi Arion case, she was checking her social media when she was abducted by her killer. So these phones are great, but at the same time, don't be so engrossed in what's going on down here that you're not aware of the real world, what's going around out here. And if you're walking and you like to listen to music, I know I do, my daughter does. If you're alone, if it's at night, whatever, maybe just have one earbud in, because they're so good these days that you cannot hear what's going on around you. Somebody can approach you from behind and you don't even know they're there because you had your earbuds in. So just little things like that would be my suggestion, but I mean, who am I? So, okay, next I want to get into, I have some short video clips that kind of go along with my talking points. And this is the first one. I'm going to play this clip and then we're going to get into my next point. This is actually Kaylee's parents. I think most of what I'm going to show you most of the clips that I'm going to show you are going to be her parents, her dad, her sister, things like that. So, okay, here we go.
But these two girls, I'm going to do what I can do, and we're not being victims. We're going to fight. We're going to figure out how to make sure that we hold everybody, accountable, and we keep eyes and attention on this and get this thing resolved.
Steve, you have made it very clear to our audience that you are supportive of law enforcement. You support the investigation. But recently, I've been watching and talking with you, and you're getting frustrated. What does that frustration come from, sir?
They put certain people between you and the officers that are making things happen, and those people are like lawyers, and they don't want to say anything, and they don't have the guts to come up and be alpha and be like leaders and say, hey, we might say something that's wrong. We're going to take that hit. So the officers, they look me straight in their eyes. The lead detective looked me in his eyes. I have no doubt he's working as hard as he can, but somebody isn't communicating. There's nothing being released. It seems like they're trying to suppress the story. We want to put rewards out. They're like, don't do that. Yeah, I get it. Your town doesn't want to have reward posters posted all over when you come and you do your rush. You're not going to get a lot of students if they see those things. But this community is not going to heal until this guy's pulled off the streets. It ain't going to happen. Think it through. It's not going to happen. He has to be off the streets. We all are working for the same thing.
Okay. I think the reason this story resonates with me so much is because I have kids in this age range. My oldest, Brett, actually messaged me today. He was in the Navy. He got out and he's got a job and he's going to go back to school now and go for a software engineering degree. And it will help him in his job. But I can relate to this college experience, not just from when I went to school, but I have one, he's my oldest. I have another one that's out in California in the Navy. When he gets out, he's going to be going to school for what he wants to do when he comes home to Oklahoma. And then my daughter's 18. She's doing, I guess you could call it a gap year while she kind of tries to figure out what direction she wants to go when she gets to school. So I can really kind of feel for these parents. And my next point that I have written down was protecting the college and Moscow. So the dad is kind of, he's saying like it was strategic to say it was targeted and that they don't reward posters up when new students are coming in. So my question that I wrote down was, how would that be any worse than having an unsolved quadruple murder investigation going on? And what I mean by that is, if, let's say you were scheduled to start at the beginning of this upcoming semester after Christmas break, or you were, you had your list of potential schools and University of Idaho is one of the schools on your list. As a student or a parent, let's say my daughter on her list of schools is OU, of course, Boomer Sooner. If something like this were to happen, we're going to be aware of it. Before we set one foot in Norman to potentially see a poster, we're going to be aware of what's going on. We're going to know. And whether there are reward posters up around town or not, this is national news. It's out there. So it's probably already influencing people's decisions on if they want to go there, if they want to send their kids there. I don't see how the posters are going to make that big of a difference. And I asked my daughter, what would deter you more? Seeing a poster or knowing that this investigation is going on and it's unsolved and the person that did it is still out there? And she said both. And I said, but knowing about the investigation would seeing a reward poster make it any worse? And she said, well, no. And this, again, it's my channel, so it's my opinion. You don't have to agree. But for me, if I went to the town knowing what I know, what's going on, and I see these posters up, right now, these posters that I have up on screen are being posted around, although in one of my previous videos, I told you cops have been called because somebody's actually removing the posters, which speculatively, is that somebody from the university? I don't know. Like I said, speculation. But if I went to the town and I saw reward posters up, honestly, more than scaring me, I would feel like, good, they're being proactive. They're out there, they're canvassing, they're looking to get information, all the information they can get. They're putting up money for information to try to bring this to some kind of resolution. So I don't feel like having those posters up is necessarily a bad thing. I get it. The school is a huge, probably the biggest, largest part of the economy of Moscow. We know it's a small community. For me, I can equate it to a military base because we're military. When there is a military base, it brings in a lot of money to the surrounding communities because of the influx of people that are spending money in the area. So I get it why the city of Moscow doesn't want to deter people from coming to the university. The university obviously doesn't want people to not come to their school, but this is bigger than a financial opportunity. This is 4 lives that were taken. And in the grand scheme of things, your priority should be getting justice for these 4 students. Worry more about them and their families than your bottom line. And like I said, that's just my opinion. I don't think reward posters would be that damaging at this point. The story's out there. Everybody knows that this guy hasn't been caught. There's not a suspect. So reward posters are certainly not going to do any further damage than what has already been done. Okay. Next clip.
They have told us that it was targeted, but they told us they can't tell who. We asked specifically, and they said, we'll try to get that information to you. And they got back to us a day or so later, and they said, we're sorry, we can't give you that information. But then a day later, we saw in the news that it was not targeted, or they think the whole house was targeted. But
I'll cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Their means of death don't match.
Maddie's
They don't.
and Kaylee's cause of death, it does not match based on the autopsy report.
They don't match.
Would indicate that one of them.
He doesn't have to
may
go
have
up
been
the
target.
steps. Let's stop playing games, guys. I need somebody to step up and be an alpha. Be somebody to be a leader. Don't make me do it. I don't want to do it. He doesn't have to go up the steps. Their points of damage don't match. I'm just going to say it. It wasn't leaked to me. I earned that. I paid for that funeral. I paid for that. It's my right. You ain't taking that from me.
calm down.
If you don't want to say nothing, that's your bet. But don't say I'm leaking anything. I paid that bill. Sent my daughter to college to get an education. She came back in the box, and I can speak on that.
Sorry. Dogs doing damage to my daughter's water bottle. So we had a little incident. Okay, so going off of that clip, I want to talk about, everybody out there is saying, is Kaylee's dad ruining the investigation? And I'm kind of on the fence about this one. He's given away a few pieces of what we talked about earlier, the guilt knowledge, right? About the injuries, where they were at in the house, things like that. But there's still other pieces of guilt knowledge. You know, he said, like, you know, her injuries were worse or whatever, but we don't know what they were specifically, things like that. And I understand from the parent's perspective. I was talking to my best friend, and her and I both were like, we love this guy, because if this was our kid, you wouldn't be able to shut us up. At the same time, I think her and I, she's as much into true crime as I am. I feel like we know what we should and shouldn't say, but I feel their frustration. And I get it that he feels like by putting more information out there, it might eventually generate more tips and more focused tips. And what I mean by that is, if you give the information, like here, you know, he didn't have to go upstairs. Okay, that kind of, it makes you think they were there for Maddie and Kaylee, right? So maybe this will spark something in somebody's mind that, if you hear that, I swear nobody's peeing. My daughter's making hot chocolate with the Keurig. So I'm sorry if you hear that noise. God, I just totally went off the track. If you are putting information out there about specific things that happen to specific people, it might trigger something in somebody's mind to think, oh, you know what? I saw Kaylee have this interaction with so-and-so and it wasn't good. Or I heard so-and-so say whatever about Maddie and it was bad. Or this person was really mad at them for whatever reason. So I can kind of see where he thinks putting more out there could generate more leads that were specific, that would help lead to a suspect. Will it work? I don't know. Like I said, I don't necessarily think he's ruining the investigation. I feel like that is the absolute last thing he wants to do, because he's very worried about the investigation. I don't think he feels like what he's saying is stuff that we don't have the right to know. So, like I said, I feel his frustration. I can see that law enforcement probably isn't thrilled that he's out there saying these things. But as long as he doesn't give too much away, I feel like... Thank you.
Your weenie dog cup.
My weenie dog cup. I don't know if you guys can see my cup. It says life is short, so are my legs. Thank you. I mean, how awesome is it that your daughter will make you hot chocolate when you're freezing? So, no, I don't think he is necessarily ruining the investigation, but he does need to be mindful of what he puts out there and not give away too much. And that's kind of where I will leave that talking point. Let's see here. Let's take them down. Oh, and before we move on, actually, I was going to pull this up. This was from one of my previous videos. This was something that I made talking about the possible scenario with the killer. We were talking about the entry points. So on this one, you can see the purple arrows as if they went in that kitchen window that investigators were so focused on. and exited through the slider. The same principle applies if he entered the window or the slider. You still go through the kitchen and just make that immediate turn and go up the stairs. So if the killer was going for Xana and Ethan, then the dad is right. He didn't have to go up the stairs. He could have just simply walked through the kitchen, into the living room, and then turned and gone into where Xana and Ethan were. In this scenario that I had drawn out, we were assuming the killer was there for Maddie and Kaylee upstairs, and that he entered and he went upstairs, and then as he was exiting, you see my arrow for Ethan, he heard something and came around, spotted the killer on his way out, and then that is why Ethan and Xana were also killed. Because in thinking that Kaylee and Maddie are the target, probably in their mind, in all of our minds, the idea would be go in, go upstairs, do it, come back down, get out. The vacant bedroom right there, you're not thinking, okay, there's nobody in there, so I don't have to worry about that. But Xana and Ethan's room is far enough away that you're probably not thinking that they're going to hear it and that you can slip in and slip out without being caught. And in that scenario, then it's I hate to use this as the phrasing, but the collateral damage theory that Xana and Ethan were not intended to be killed that night. They were killed because they encountered the killer. Now that, and I want to make it clear because I've been hearing it on social media and it pisses me off. That does not mean that if the killer had, let's say, one target and the other 3 died wrong place, wrong time, it's not the victim's fault, it's the killer's fault. Let's say Kaylee was the target. It's not Kaylee's fault that Maddie, Ethan, and Xana died. And that's one thing that I will go toe-to-toe with you on. If that's how you feel, this might not be the right channel for you. Because the only person to blame for all 4 deaths is the killer. It is absolutely not the victim's fault. We do not victim blame or victim shame on this channel. And every time I see somebody word it that way, it really makes me angry. The killer chose to take those other victims out along with his target. Plain and simple. But if Xana and Ethan were the targets, then her dad is correct. He had no reason to go upstairs. So it's just something to think about, and this kind of visually helps you see what he meant by that. Okay. Let's see. Kaylee's injuries being worse does not absolutely mean she was the target. And again, we've talked about this in a previous video. I'm sure you guys remember it. It was the same video where we talked about possible motives and how we broke it down by each individual person. Like, this person might have been the target because XYZ. We also talked about the fact that just because your injuries are more severe doesn't necessarily mean you're the target. It absolutely could mean you're the target, but let's say they were there for Xana and Ethan was there, and they didn't think Ethan was going to be there, and that pissed them off, and Ethan's fighting them. So maybe Ethan took more of a vicious attack because A, he pissed off the killer, and B, he fought back. If we talk about Kaylee's being worse than Maddie's, it's the same principle, right? If he was there for Kaylee and she's not in her room, she's in Maddie's room, that could have been enough to piss him off that she was not where she was supposed to be, and now he's got to kill Maddie too. And I mean, if Maddie was the target and they found Kaylee in her room, Kaylee's not supposed to be A, even there, and B, in her room. So he kills Maddie, but he's so pissed off that Kaylee is there and maybe she's fighting him. That makes it more vicious. It screwed up his plan. It wasn't what he intended. He could have just had, he was angry enough to kill the target, but somebody interfered with that. And that could have been enough to set him off to make their injuries worse. And in the act of fighting someone off, because we know some of them had defensive wounds, they're going to fight harder. They're going to attack harder, trying to get this person the hell off of them. So I don't think that it automatically means she was the target. Like I said, it could mean she's the target, but it doesn't necessarily pinpoint, say, yep, she's the target because she got the worst of it. Not always. There's so many different scenarios to consider that I don't think it's right for us to just say, well, she had worse injuries, she's the one they were after. We don't know yet. We don't know. And we talked in that other video too about how even the order of the killings isn't necessarily going to tell us who the target was. Because let's put this back up again. Let's say the killer came in and before he got upstairs, if that was his target, before he got upstairs, Xana and Ethan heard him come in and confronted him. And they were killed first. Well, they weren't the target, but he had to kill them to get to the target. So even the order of their deaths doesn't necessarily tell us who the target was. Ethan could have been killed first, but he wasn't the target. You don't know. You don't know. There's too much that we don't know for us to be making judgments and trying to pinpoint who was the target. And in the end, the target doesn't really matter other than narrowing down the suspect. If you can figure out who the target is, that might help you hone in on who you need to be looking at, right? But in the end, all four are gone. All four were senselessly murdered. So right now, for us, it doesn't matter who the target was. It just matters that whoever is responsible for this is caught. But if knowing the target helps police, then I hope they can figure out who the target was. I do agree with the killer going upstairs. Seems to point to them being the target, one or both. But we talked in my other video, if it was Xana and Ethan and the girls heard something, maybe they opened the door and said, shouted down the stairs like, hey, are you okay? Or something like that. And the killer was like, shit, they heard me. And now I've got to go up there and kill these potential witnesses. We simply don't know. Okay. Next clip.
But we know that this is getting 3 weeks in and it's starting to get we don't want it to go cold. We're reaching out. I reached out to friends down in California today that have connections that we're hoping to raise some money to get a reward, to get a private investigator.
Third party.
Why go the private route? Do y'all worry that at the end of this week that this case may be
100%.
cold?
We're scared.
When you tell me you don't want a photo up there with the reward offering information, that kind of sounds like you're trying to like suppress the story. I mean, why do you not need help? But hey, I could be wrong, and you officers, I apologize if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I want to.
absolutely.
Please forgive me. But if you don't have the information, people do know. If they don't, then
Give us
the
something.
community. This is a community that is IT based. These guys live a digital footprint like we've never. All of us older people, we don't know how much that digital footprint could be helpful. So that's what we ask for. I hope like a DNA, a family lineage, if they could come out here and just start taking. This town is not that big. We could figure out this, and it might not be him. It might be a family member. We have family all going to the school together. You know, there's cousins, there's aunts, there's uncles. We could find this guy
Those,
just with volunteers.
lineage companies were,
Put Idaho on the map.
Christy, Steve, we're going to stay on this case.
Thank you.
We're not
Thank you.
going anywhere.
Thank you.
You guys have been candid with us. We'll keep asking questions. Any resource that we have available, our audience is praying for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. It was big for you guys to come back to Moscow tonight. I know it took a lot of courage to do it, and I'm hoping we can get some answers for you. Thanks so much for joining me.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about is hiring a PI now the wrong thing to do? And having friends that are private investigators, I want to say no, because sometimes people will talk to a PI when they won't talk to the police. The police are not under the same restrictions and guidelines as law enforcement. And if a person is giving them information, obviously the PI can't arrest them, right? And in the case of my one friend that is a PI, anything you tell him is confidential. So if you give him information that is valuable to the investigation and he takes that to police, he can give them the information, but he's not going to give away your information. He's not going to give them your name. So in that sense, hiring a PI isn't necessarily a bad thing. Normally, my friends work on cold cases or cases that have kind of stalled. And yeah, we're going on a month in this investigation, but honestly, with the size of the crime scene and the number of people involved, it is going to take a while. I know we don't like that, but it's going to take a while to process all of that information. So, another thing with hiring a private investigator that I see could be a bonus is that it puts more eyes on the case, right? And they can use all the help they can get. You know, the more people that are looking at it, the better. You know, maybe they'll see something or find something that law enforcement has not. But a lot of it really is going to depend on the private investigator himself. You know, you don't want to get some guy in there that's going to interfere with the investigation. You want someone there that is there to kind of complement the investigation, to make it better, to work kind of alongside, hand in hand with authority, to be helpful, not somebody that's going to come in there and be like, I'm going to solve this all on my own kind of thing. So I don't necessarily feel like it's a bad thing. if it's the right type of private investigator. And Kaylee's dad, he's afraid that these cops are inexperienced. And to that, I would say, maybe Moscow PD is, because it's been, 7 years since their last homicide, and they're a small community. But the FBI's there, and they're not inexperienced. And he's worried that, about the younger cops. I think he said there's one that's 26 that's on the case, and he would have only been 19 the last time there was a murder there. And again, I see what he's saying, but you got to think, these younger cops going through the academy, they've had the latest and greatest training. They are probably closer to the victim and suspect's age group. They might know better, about how they think, how they act. And honestly, they may be more tech savvy than the older cops, because, let's face it, our kids know way more about all of these apps and social media and tech than we do. Well, than most of us do. So I don't think that it's fair to say like these younger cops are going to be a hindrance to the investigation. And the lack of experience, like I said, maybe Moscow doesn't have a lot of experience in this area, but I'm sure the Idaho State Police have experience, and I know the FBI has experience, and I know with the FBI bringing in the BAU, that had to be valuable for the investigation. So I don't want to be so quick to say like, oh, we have a lack of confidence in the investigation. We've got to give them a shot to do what they do and hope that they do it right and they find the answer to who did this. And like I said, I know we don't like it, but it is going to take time, and we can't give up on them just yet. But like I said, a private investigator, it's not necessarily a bad idea. On one hand, maybe you would want to wait a little longer, but on the other hand, get somebody in there now before the trail is really cold, and it could be a benefit. So I guess I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on that. Like I said, the only thing I will say is it's going to depend on the particular investigator they bring in. Okay, next clip.
Is anyone acting differently since the murders? Is there anyone that you have a weird feeling about that the girls knew or that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say not in the immediate circle by any means, but a few of the names that have been circulating around, I think it's hard not to kind of, dig into this. And I don't know how much of that is just because we have so little information from law enforcement and how much of it really is, a sister or a father's intuition.
Can you elaborate at all? I don't know. You don't have to give a name, but is it someone that she knew, or?
I have something to say about that. I just feel like there's been a couple individuals that were cleared very fast. That may not, maybe he shouldn't have been. And yeah.
She had the strong alibi.
Just really fast.
If you can dismiss.
An hour later, and we're like, what? And I don't know. I don't know anything about those individuals. I just know they were people that, definitely should have been looked at, and yeah.
I don't know what would prevent you from sharing somebody's alibi.
Yeah, I think that's what we're struggling with. So it's like, we know what we know. We've, fought for Jack, Kaylee's boyfriend, and, we still stand that way. So I did just kind of want to clear that up while we're talking through this ambiguity that, that's not what we're honing in on here.
We don't want to make more victims out of innocent people.
Exactly.
Okay, so we don't know for sure who they're talking about. I'm pretty sure that we can all agree that one person they feel was cleared too quickly was Jack S. And Kaylee's dad actually specifically talked about the hoodie guy being cleared in a article with the New York Post. And I don't know who else, because the mom said a couple individuals. So I don't know if that is the 911 call people or who, but they think that people were cleared too quickly. But I'm just going to focus on Jack S., hoodie guy, and was he cleared too quickly. So Kaylee's dad wants law enforcement to share his alibi. I don't think he wants him to, or he wants LE to share his alibi publicly. He would just like to know what that alibi is, because he said it would make it easier to accept that he's not a suspect if he had a strong, like, rock solid alibi. And that's fair. I don't know how much detail they could give, due to privacy concerns and things like that. But I understand that he would like to know the alibis. I mean, I would too as a parent. The interaction at the grub truck, it still bothers me. It still concerns me, because you could just see the level of discomfort. When you watch Kaylee and Maddie interact with other people, like giving them a hug or talking and laughing with them, and you compare that to the body language towards hoodie guy, it's completely different. And I showed you in one of my previous videos where Maddie is pointing at him and confronting him, and I told you that she had said something along the lines of "quit being a weirdo" or something like that. Well, it's come out now, people have boosted the volume and say that she says "F you." I don't know, but there was some kind of uncomfortable interaction there. It was weird that he was there and he didn't order food. When the girls moved, he moved. And when they left, he seemed mad, and he immediately takes off as well. So yeah, it still bothers me. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. It's out there. Her dad even said it in the New York Post article that Jack left the country. Law enforcement hasn't verified that. I don't know where any confirmation of that is. I've heard he's in Africa, somewhere on the continent of Africa. But we cannot confirm that. And honestly, if he hasn't been charged with anything and he wasn't told not to leave, I guess he can go to Africa. But that being out there, if somebody got that information to her family and it's incorrect, that's not helping. If he did leave, yeah, it's kind of strange, but maybe it's a trip that was already planned, was already in the works. I don't know. But if it's misinformation, it's not helping anybody. Saying he's ruled out doesn't mean they can't circle back to him if evidence leads them that way. And that's a big one. Just because they say these people have been cleared or ruled out or whatever, you have to remember, when that list of people initially came out, it was super early in the investigation, right? Like, they didn't have a lot to go on at that point. And now, they're starting to get forensic evidence back, and if somebody that they previously said was cleared, if somehow evidence ties them back to the scene or the situation, it doesn't mean they can't go back and say, okay, you're not out anymore. Now you're back in, and taking another look at them. And, you know, after they investigate everything, at some point, they're going to go back to the beginning and they're going to say, like, why did we rule this person out? Like, how are we so sure? And they're going to take a look at every single person again, whether they were ruled out in the beginning or not. So saying they're cleared to me means they were cleared for that moment. But if there is something that points at that person, then they're definitely going to go back and look at them again. They're not just going to say, oh, well, it can't be him because we cleared him. I mean, if there's strong evidence pointing at a person, they will definitely be looked at again. If one of the cleared people is the perpetrator, he may feel confident that he got away with it and make a mistake. Now, I'm not saying that that's why Ellie came out and said somebody was cleared. I don't think at this point in the investigation, when they said these people were cleared, I don't think they were far enough along in the investigation to start playing that kind of game. They could have been, but the same principle still holds true. If this guy thinks he's in the clear, they're not looking at him, he got away with it, he may slip up. He may do something, say something, whatever, and give himself away. And that definitely wouldn't be a bad thing. Jack was allegedly driving from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. So if that's his alibi, that could easily be checked out, right? GPS, cell phone pings, if he called anybody, license plate readers, traffic cameras. Driving for 5 hours, there's going to be a trail. So if that's his alibi, and they were able to verify that through some of those means, then that is a strong alibi, and maybe that's why he was cleared. And if so, I don't think there would be any harm in telling Kaylee's dad, hey, he said he was at this place, and we have verification that he was. I don't think there'd be any harm in that. So we're going to go on now. Since we're talking about him, what do we know about Jack S., hoodie guy? He was allegedly kicked out of the Delta Tau Delta fraternity for inappropriate behavior towards women at parties. Now, I say allegedly because I cannot confirm that that is why he was kicked out. Allegedly, he was kicked out of the corner club that night where Kaylee and Maddie were for creeping women out. And then he followed them to the grub truck, and I feel like he was still creeping them out. He lives nearby. They lived on King Road, and he lived on Queen Road, which is, you know, it's like a block away. Allegedly has anger issues. And then these hunting photos came out of him with this animal that, like, is just tore up. And there is a knife. You can see it at the bottom, which is like a K-bar knife, which is allegedly what the killer used. Bring this one up. So he says he immediately left the area after the grub truck, which we know we were right in, within 5 minutes of 2 when the whole grub truck thing was going on. When the girls got home, I believe it was 1:56. So it's right around 2, like 10, 15 minutes right before 2. He says he immediately left the area after the grub truck and drove 5 hours to his parents' cabin, which that's the driving from 2 a.m. till 7 a.m. His parents are doctors in the Boise area, and allegedly he has family that's also in law enforcement, and it sounds like they're pretty wealthy people, which, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, he's got connections, he's got ties to Ellie, he's got money, he's gonna get away with it. Allegedly, we just talked about this, left the country, and they say he left without giving a DNA sample, which, yeah, to me that's concerning, but at the same time, if he hasn't been charged with anything, if they have confirmed his alibi, they cannot force him to give them his DNA. Now, most people, like we know, Jeremy, the neighbor that had been doing all the interviews, he was getting harassed really bad, and he went to the police station on his own volition and gave them a DNA sample without them asking. I would think Jackass would have been like, take my DNA. You know, you're not going to find it there, so yeah, go ahead and take it. But allegedly, he left the country, which, like, that's alleged as well, but he did not leave a DNA sample. So, again, it's one of those situations that it is what it is, right? I mentioned earlier about the celebration of life, and the families got up and spoke, and Jake, who was Maddie's boyfriend, he got up and he spoke for quite a while about Maddie, and something that he said about her was, she was the first person I talked to every morning and the last person I talked to before bed. She was the person I loved most. And then when Kaylee's family went up there, it was like her sisters, her brother, her dad, her mom, and Jack D. And the mom, she was talking, she was going to read a poem, but she was really emotional, really choked up. And the dad actually ended up doing most of the talking. And towards the end, he asked if, he kind of looked at his family and was like, do you want to say anything? And they said no. And Jack and the dad were like, it was like they were trying to avoid each other. And Jack was kind of like hanging closer to the mom. And he was standing by the mom. And the dad looks over and is like, do you want to say anything? And he said no. And then as they're walking away, Jack puts his arm around Kaylee's mom, and her dad gave him this look, and I'm going to play you the video because it cracks me up. It may not mean anything. It probably doesn't mean anything, but look at the look on the dad's face when he looks at Jack. Like, I don't know. It makes me laugh because it's kind of like, are you kidding me, guy? Or, you know, whatever. I feel like the dad right now, he doesn't trust anybody. I don't care who you are. If you were associated with his daughter in some way, if you were in that area or whatever, he don't trust you right now. And the mom and the sister, you know, they were like, oh, 100% we support Jack. He wasn't involved, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if the dad's on board with that. I don't know. I feel like the dad he don't care. He's after whoever at this point. And I just kind of got a laugh out of that video because he gave him this look that, I mean, it's the dad looking at your daughter's boyfriend look, right? So yeah, Jake spoke, Jack didn't. And now our next point is that almost 5-hour gap for Xana and Ethan. And in yesterday's update, the Moscow Police Department said they are probing the movements of Xana and Ethan after they left the Sig Kai party at 9 p.m. And we have talked about this in my previous videos about they were there from 8 to 9. Why did they leave after only an hour? Did something happen at that party? Was there a fight? Was there an argument? Did somebody make them feel uncomfortable? Why did they leave? And they're looking at Sig Kai, which they should, because it's really the only place we know of for sure that they had been. And I had mentioned to you Ken Maines earlier, and one of the questions that he was supposed to be asked on his News Nation interview was regarding Sig Kai. And I just want to play you a little clip of his video, and it'll give you an idea of the kind of guy he is. And we kind of think the same. So I want you to hear what he has to say about them looking at Sigma Chi.
3. Police are asking for any video from between the frat house and the crime scene between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., not 9 p.m. and 1:45 a.m. What does that tell you? I'll tell you what that tells me. That police are doing their job and they are looking at people in that frat house. Now why? Because they're suspects? Well, no, but yeah. No, but yeah. Because everybody's a suspect until they're cleared. So, hey, the last place that they know that they were at was at this frat party. Is it possible somebody from that frat house got offended, got rejected, got locked in, targeted, whatever it is, and followed them home, committed the murders, came back? Yes, it's possible. So why are they looking for video for in the time frame after the murders happen? Simple. You want to see if anybody's coming in late. Coming into that frat house at 3 or 4 in the morning, covered in blood. Even if they're not covered in blood. If they just came home. But hey, we already interviewed this guy 2 weeks ago, and he said that he was home and in bed. And here's this footage showing him coming into the house at 3 o'clock. Well, guess what? Now he's number one suspect. So police looking for video after the murder of the frat house makes total sense to me. Total sense. They're just looking to see if somebody's coming back. Because it gives them a lead. And as a detective, if you're worth a shit as a detective, that's all you want, is to have another lead to follow up on. When leads dry up, that's how cases become cold. And we don't want that in this. Okay? So, they're doing everything they're supposed to do. Again, the media here trying to spin the narrative a little bit.
I love him, and I want his book, and I think I put it on my Amazon wish list the other day. Love him. There's Steve. I don't know if that means he's a fan or he's not a fan. But do you see what he's saying? I mean, this is the last place that we know for sure they were. So, are they suspects? I mean, yes and no. Like he said, could somebody there know something? Absolutely. Potentially, they should know, right? Somebody in that house should know when they left, where they were planning to go, or what they did, and people that were there. Can you go see if he needs the channel changed or something? People there would be able to answer questions like, was there an incident at the party? Did they have an argument with somebody? You know, were they uncomfortable? Things like that. So absolutely they have to look at Sigma Chi, and like he said, it's right out, you know, it's just, you walk down that concrete pathway and you get from Sig Chi to the house. So yeah, you want to see the comings and goings of the house. Like, did this person say they came home at this time, but actually they didn't come home to this time? Why'd they say that? Where were they at? That kind of thing. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. Steve is hostile. Rachel Ray must be getting ready to go off or something. Public Information Officer Aaron Snell says that the time gap is actually one of the larger areas that we don't have a lot of information on. So being able to locate what they did that night, who they contacted, any routes they took home would be important to the investigation. Well, no shit. And that's kind of what we've been saying here on this channel all along. Where were they? Why don't we know where they were? There's got to be a digital footprint. Where were their phones pinging? I know they have their phones. There's no way they didn't have their phones. So between 9 and 1:45 a.m., where the hell were they? What were they doing? Were they just driving around? Xana's mom said she thought that they had been at a bar. Okay, if they were at a bar, someone should be able to come forward and say, oh, they were at such and such a bar, or there'd be video footage of them at the bar or something. It's been bizarre to me all along, that gap. Why is it so difficult to narrow down where they were? It's odd to me. And finding that information out could go a long way to determining if something had happened with them and they were the target or targets. So that gap it's very interesting. And if you know anyone, I know some of you have people at that university, and if they know anything, if they saw them at any point in the evening, please let somebody know, because every little piece of this puzzle gets us closer to solving who killed these people. I say it all the time on here. No piece of information is too small. You don't know what it's going to take. And your one little tip that seems insignificant, or that thing that you think, oh, somebody else probably already told them, go ahead and call it in, because maybe somebody else didn't already tell them. Maybe that little insignificant thing is exactly what they've been waiting for. So get this out to as many people as you can. Whether you're in the area, you have someone in the area, share it, because somebody that is in the area, maybe they'll see it. And just encourage people to really think hard back to that night, if they saw anything, if they heard anything, if they know anything. Okay, did Kaylee have a stalker or not? This is kind of like the targeted, not targeted. You know, we can't confirm she had a stalker. Oh, we found these guys that in October were watching her and followed her, and it's unrelated and it's not connected to the investigation. It was an isolated incident, which in Moscow, everything seems to be an isolated incident and no report is ever taken, it seems like. And that's the case with this. So they're like, yeah, these weren't really stalkers. It was just an isolated thing. So no, she didn't have a stalker. Well, we can't confirm she had a stalker, so we still really don't know. And then this has been a big one. Murphy's becoming famous, isn't he? And they said, what room was Murphy in? They said he was not in the room where the murders occurred. So possibly was he with Dylan and Bethany downstairs? Sure, maybe he could have been sleeping in one of their rooms with them because everybody else was out. Definitely possible. If not, though, was he placed in a different room by the killer? And this is big for me. We know we had the vacant bedroom on the main floor where Xana and Ethan's room was. We know that bedroom was vacant. And Kaylee was in Maddie's room, so Kaylee's room wouldn't have been part of the crime scene, because they said that he wasn't in any of the rooms where the murders occurred, and he had not entered the crime scene. So it kind of sounds like he was locked in a room. So that makes you think he was either closed in the vacant bedroom, he was closed in Kaylee's room, or he was downstairs with Dylan and Bethany, which if he was, I don't know why they wouldn't just come out and say he was sleeping with one of the surviving roommates, but whatever. So why would the killer do that? To me, it only points to like one person, and I'm not going to name that person, but why would you put the dog in a different room as opposed to killing the dog? Think about it. If you're going to kill 4 people, you're not going to be willing to kill a dog? It seems off, right? And like I said, I'm not going to say the name, but if that's what happened, and I'm not saying he's the only one that would do it. Maybe you have a killer out there that's a dog lover that has no problem annihilating people, but absolutely could not bring themselves to annihilate an animal. Maybe. But there's one person in particular that would absolutely not want to hurt Murphy. Particularly Murphy. Not just like dogs in general, but Murphy in particular. And I'm just going to leave it there. But think about that. If he wasn't with the roommates, why would the killer put him somewhere else? It's kind of interesting. And while we're talking about the roommates, it seems like the parents of the victims don't have a lot of information from the roommates. I'm wondering, have they talked to them at all? I would think they would have, but they don't seem to know much about them, about that night, about the 911 call, about anything. And then details like this about Murphy, they would be able to tell them, because Kaylee's family was like, we have no idea where he was found. We don't know if he had any evidence on him. And that would be something like if he was in, say, Dylan's room, she could have cleared that up and been like, no, Murphy's fine. He was with me. So, I don't know. Why aren't the cars locked in a secure facility? This is a weird one for me. This picture I showed you all before, when I showed you the cars being towed away, that video that just, for whatever reason, made me very emotional. The cars are still sitting right here. Just like this. Just like the day I showed it. And a lot of people are wondering why. Now, we talked before, they had previously searched the vehicles, but for whatever reason, they decided last week to finally tow them away from the home and take them to what they said was a secure facility. And I guess we all kind of assumed they would be in some sort of locked building, garage type thing. But they have been sitting out in the freezing cold temperatures, in the elements. You can see they're covered with snow. So obviously anything of evidentiary value on the outside is gone. So hopefully they got all of that collected on their initial search the day that this all happened. Now, as far as them being sitting out like that, to me, looking like down the road towards a trial, they could be tampered with, right? Down the road, if you're going to have a trial, it's going to be real easy if they say like, well, we found whatever piece of evidence in whatever car. A defense attorney is going to be like, yeah, well, look, they were just sitting out there. That could have been planted easily. So it is kind of weird to me. The house, they've still got the crime scene tape up. They're guarding it. They have a private security company guarding the house now to free up their patrol officers, but it is being guarded by 2 people 24/7. but these cars are not. And that is strange. That is very strange to me. And now I just want to touch on some dumb, in my opinion, dumb speculation out there. And I'm hoping, I know you guys are all smart enough to be able to look at something and be like, no. But I've only wrote down two things here because I kind of want to wrap this up. It's an hour and a half. It's longer than I wanted to go. But there is just some dumb shit floating around out there about this case that if the family see it, I'm like, oh my God. You have to always think of the families. You have to assume the families are reading, watching, listening to anything pertaining to this case. Whether they are or not, you should just always assume they are. And have respect, have grace. One of the things that came out, and this pissed me off, not just for what they said, but who they are. So, a former FBI agent, Jonathan Gilliam, said, Kaylee's dad is the killer. Are you freaking kidding me right now? Are you freaking kidding me? If you have seen this guy or listened to this guy for 5 minutes, he loved Kaylee and Maddie so much. So much. This guy, you can feel his grief through the television screen. And then this former FBI agent is going to say that he's the killer? What? Where the hell do you even come up with something like that? So, no. The last one that I find ridiculous is it was a murder-suicide. I can debunk that in about 5 seconds. Murder weapon. If this was a murder-suicide, why haven't they found the weapon? You cannot kill yourself and get rid of a weapon. It's just not possible. So, you want me to believe that you went around and you committed a murder-suicide, but you thought, you know what? I'm going to let the two downstairs live. I'm just going to take out me and these other three. First, you want me to believe that. Then, you want me to believe that you killed yourself by stabbing yourself multiple times. Okay, maybe you missed the first time. I don't know. But what I cannot buy is if it was a murder-suicide, you killed yourself and managed to get rid of the weapon. Get rid of it so well that police can't find it? How does that work? If this was a murder-suicide, this case would be wrapped up already. They would have the weapon. They would know who used the weapon. We wouldn't be where we are. So stop. I guarantee you, with everything I have, that is not what happened here. Absolutely not. And Kaylee's dad didn't do it. I would bet my farm on that. So, okay. I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. Sorry, this went a little longer than normal, but I hope it was helpful. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me your thoughts, your comments, your ideas in the comments below. Let me know what you're thinking about everything that I brought to you. Actually, no, we are not there yet. I didn't read you the Moscow update that kind of addressed everything that we talked about. Hang on. So this came out yesterday. They said, there have been statements and speculation about this case, victim injuries, cause of death, evidence collection and processing, and investigative techniques. With the active criminal investigation, law enforcement has not released additional facts to the family or the public. We recognize the frustration this causes and that speculation proliferates in the absence of facts. However, we firmly believe speculation and unvetted information is a disservice to the victims, their families, and our community. The Moscow Police Department is committed to providing information whenever possible, but not at the expense of compromising the investigation and prosecution. Detectives continue investigating what occurred from approximately 9 p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th, when Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle were believed to be at the Sigma Chi House on the University of Idaho campus at 735 Nez Perce Drive. Any interactions, contacts, direction, and method of travel, or anything abnormal could add context to what occurred. Detectives continue processing and working through more than 2,645 emailed tips, 2,770 phone tips, and 1,084 digital media submissions. We believe someone has information that will add context to the picture investigators are creating of what occurred that evening. Our focus is the investigation, not the activities. Your information, whether you believe it is significant or not, might be one of the puzzle pieces that help solve these murders. Using tips and leads, investigators have identified an incident involving Kaylee at a local business, which may have been the stalker reference she made to friends and family. In mid-October, 2 males were seen inside a local business. They parted ways, and one male appeared to follow Kaylee inside the business, and as she exited to walk towards her car. The male turned away, and it did not appear he made any contact with her. Detectives contacted both males and learned the two were attempting to meet women at the business. This was corroborated through additional investigation. Based on available information, detectives believe this was an isolated incident and not an ongoing pattern of stalking. No evidence suggests the 2 males were involved in the murders. Investigators continue looking into information about Kaylee having a stalker. Information about a potential stalker or unusual occurrences should go through the tip line. There have been numerous requests about the dog found at the residence on the morning of November 13th. Arriving officers entered the residence and found the deceased victims. During the search of the home, a dog was found in a room where the crimes had not been committed. Officers did not find any evidence on the dog, and there was no indication the animal had entered the crime scene. The dog was taken to Animal Services and released to a responsible person. While the dog was in the house when officers arrived, it has not been determined where the dog was physically located when the murders took place. At this time, no suspect has been identified, and only vetted information that does not hinder the investigation will be released to the public. There is speculation without factual backing, stoking community fears, and spreading false information. We encourage referencing official releases for accurate information and updated progress. Detectives are looking for context to the events and people involved in these murders. To assist with the ongoing investigation, any odd or out of the ordinary events that took place should be reported. Our focus is the investigation, not the activities. Your information, whether you believe it is significant or not, might be the piece of the puzzle that helps investigators solve these murders. Information can be submitted. Tip line 208-883-7180. Email tipline@ci.moscow.id.us. Digital media fbi.gov/Moscow, Idaho. Okay. So there you go. There you have it. You are as up to date as I am. There's been nothing new released by the police department as of 3:10 p.m. Central on Tuesday. So thank you for spending part of your day with me to get updated and kind of go over some of the major talking points that are out there. Like I said, leave me your comments. Let me know what you think. Share this. Give it a thumbs up, please. It really helps me if you give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and do so. And when you do, click the bell to all. Hopefully, YouTube will give you a notification when I upload or go live. And if you are interested, join our membership and become part of the Steve Squad. If you don't know who Steve is, he's the house chicken that you heard earlier. And everybody is a big fan of Steve. So, everybody have a great evening. And I will probably see you tomorrow. As always, I will see you all in the next one.